The card is still in my jacket pocket. I have carried it for 11 years, through 3 more postings, 2 commendations, a medical discharge and partial reinstatement, and the long quiet of my apartment on Tuesday evenings when there is nothing on and the sky outside goes the particular orange it goes in autumn. I carry it the way some people carry a photograph. It is not sentimental, exactly. It is more that I have never found the right moment to put it down. Let me tell you what it is first, so you understand why I keep it. It is a laminated card, about the size of a playing card, slightly thicker. Standard issue, 2041 vintage, the kind they handed out to every diplomat and field envoy before a first contact engagement. Two-sided, 14 columns of phoneme pair mappings in blue ink, 12-point font, organized by vocal anatomy assumed. Labial stops, palatal fricatives, the wet clicks the Govari make with a secondary larynx that humans need months of practice to approximate. The lamination has gone slightly yellow at the edges. My initials are in black marker on the back corner PW. The card is a relic, officially. The system it belonged to was discontinued. I slid that card face down across the Govari negotiation table on the morning of March the 5th, and I've been thinking about what happened next ever since. The Govari are catalogers. That is not the diplomatic descriptor. The diplomatic descriptor is data sovereign species of the outer convergence, which is the kind of phrase designed to make them feel respected while telling you nothing. What they are is catalogers. In 600 years of contact expansion, they have engaged 29 intelligent species, and they have not lost a single negotiation. The reason they have not lost is simple. Before they enter any chamber, they already know your weaknesses. Not guesses, not projections. Verified, sourced, classified weaknesses organized by category and cross-referenced against every diplomatic engagement on record. The Govari do not study your civilization the way a biologist studies a specimen. They study it the way a locksmith studies a lock, patiently, precisely, with full intent to open it. They had a file on humanity. Of course they did. They had been building it for 14 years before that morning, from signals intercepts, from proxy bot commercial data, from the 3 human diplomats who had entered Govari space before me and come home with agreements that looked, on paper, like mutual treaties and were, in practice, structured concessions. My predecessor, a career diplomat named Osei, who had been doing this since before I had finished my postgraduate work, had spent 11 days in Govari chambers and come home having surrendered transit rights through the Kepler corridor. He told me afterward, over coffee in the debrief room, that it was not that they caught him in a lie. It was that they already knew what lie he was going to tell before he told it. They let him tell it. Then they produced a file. I had read Osei's debrief 3 times before I landed. The chamber they use is daylit. I had expected something ceremonial, something designed to communicate power through architecture. High ceilings, low lighting, the alien equivalent of marble. What I got was a wide, bright room with windows running floor to ceiling along the southern wall, flooding the whole space with a white late morning light that made everything look very ordinary and very clear. There were 6 of them on their side of the table. The senior cataloger, they do not use personal names in professional contexts. It is a title, a designation, sat at the center. She was older than the others in the way I had learned to read Govari age. The banding on the secondary ridge above the eye cluster, pale gold shading toward white. They let me sit. They offered water. They were impeccably courteous in the way that people are courteous when they are holding 4 aces and see no reason to be otherwise. Then the senior cataloger opened the file. She did not call a file. She said, "We have prepared an orientation summary in the interest of productive dialogue." And then she began. Humanity's dependency on bilateral treaty structures. Humanity's institutional reluctance to cede first-use jurisdiction. The names of 3 lobbying organizations that had shaped my specific mandate before I left Earth, which I had not been told she would know. The health data of 1 member of my negotiating commission, not mine, the junior attaché, sitting 2 seats to my left, a young man named Ferris who had taken a medical leave 3 years prior for a thing that had been resolved and that he did not discuss. She did not read this data. She stated it. The way you state a fact you have known so long, it requires no emphasis. Ferris went very still. I watched him from the corner of my eye, and I thought, she is not doing this to humiliate him. She is doing it to tell me, in the clearest possible language, that the walls I thought I had are not walls. They are gauze. I let her finish. There's a technique I was taught early in my training by a woman named Carver who had 20 years of contact negotiation behind her and a reputation for emerging from impossible rooms with workable agreements. The technique is this. Let the other side complete their display. Let them lay everything on the table. Do not interrupt, do not react, and do not fill the silence that follows. The silence is not empty. It is the space where the other side's certainty begins to eat itself, because certainty maintained against no resistance has nothing to push against and starts, subtly, to wonder if it has misread the room. I let the silence run for about 4 seconds. Then I reached into my jacket pocket and I took out the card and I placed it face down on the table and slid it toward the senior cataloger. She looked at it. She looked at me. She picked it up. The front of the card is 14 columns of phoneme pairs. Standard. The kind of thing you would find in any first contact translation kit from that era. She read it quickly. The Govari are fast readers, and I could see her recalibrating, deciding that I had handed her something procedural, something bureaucratic, possibly something slightly naive. A human envoy producing a physical translation card in a formal negotiation was, I imagine, a minor curiosity. A data point for the file. Then she turned it over. The back of the card has 12 rows of what appear, at first glance, to be additional phoneme pairs. They are not. They are a different kind of mapping entirely. The second row from the top contains a sequence of 12 glyphs in the Govari's own written script. Not a transliteration, not a near approximation. The actual glyphs, in the actual internal notation system, the Govari use in documents they do not share with outside species. The sequence reads, in their own language, what we call ourselves when no one else is listening. There is no clean translation for the designation. The nearest human equivalent is something like, those who measure, but that loses the recursive quality. In Govari, the designation implies both the act of measuring and the awareness that the act of measuring changes the thing being measured. It is a sophisticated concept. It suggests a species that has thought carefully about the ethics of what they do and arrived at a term that contains both the pride and the discomfort. I had spent 8 months learning to read that script, 14 months learning to speak it with enough accuracy that the secondary larynx approximation held up under scrutiny. I had done most of it in my apartment on Tuesday evenings. I looked at the senior cataloger, and I said in Govari, with what I hoped was a passable palatal register on the 3rd syllable, I know what you call yourselves. The room was very quiet. The late morning light came through the floor-to-ceiling windows and made everything look very clear. I watched the senior cataloger's secondary ridge banding, the pale gold near the eye cluster, and I saw the thing happen that I had not been certain would happen, a slight, involuntary contraction. Not fear, not anger, something older and more complicated than both. She set the card down on the table. She did not, in the end, ask how I had gotten it. I think she already knew, the way they always know, that somewhere in the 14 years they had been building a file on humanity, a human had been in the room. Quiet, cataloging, taking notes in a language no one thought we knew, saying nothing until the moment it mattered. We reached an agreement that afternoon. Not everything I came for. Not nothing either. The Kepler transit rights came back. Ferris's medical history was expunged from the record, which had not been a demand I had stated and did not need to be. The card is still in my jacket pocket. I do not carry it because of what it won. I carry it because of what the senior cataloger said in Govari as I was leaving. The one thing she said that was not in any file, not in any briefing, not in any record I was supposed to have access to. She said, those who measure are not afraid of being measured. I did not answer. I put my jacket on. I walked out into the bright, ordinary day. I have been thinking about it ever since.